Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the realm of chess. Uh, Even if you're the best chess player on the planet, it's possible every now and then you will be making blunders. So that's exactly what we're gonna see in the next game, but not because the one of the protagonists, namely the current world champion, made the blunder, Magnus Carlsen, but because Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, his opponent on that day, played a very, very good, creative, and aggressive game. So it's not just because one blundered, but because the other one also played an incredibly intelligent fashion here. So let's just have a look together, my chess friends. So we are talking about the Meltwater Tour final in 2021. It was standard time, and Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, which, if I am correct, is number 15 ranked, a super GM from Azerbaijan, versus Magnus Carlsen. So this is a game that happened 2 years ago, but it's totally worth it, guys, to having a look and analyze it together. So I'll go with the A3 now. This is a Mengarini. That's what Mamedyarov chose to play versus Magnus Carlsen. So if you needed an extra reason for adding this opening to your repertoire, there you go. Here comes another motivation for you fellas. It's being played at the highest level in chess. G6 Magnus played. Now normally you would find very often happens like knight c6 and e6. So these are the moves that you will be playing against most of the cases. Okay, so most of the players with black would be responding this. It's also possible for them to play d5. Nothing wrong, but in this game that we are looking at now, they chose to play. Magnus chose to play g6, and Mamedyarov, believe it or not, he goes absolutely berserk. He goes with h4. And that already tells us that white wants to go forwards with that pawn and to open up the h column for the rook. So whatever you see an h4 being played, you should be expecting h5 soon after. So knight f6, it's sort of like wants to put a hold on that pawn's advancement, but Mamedyarov obviously hits in the center with e5. So now knight must move, and it goes to h5. Shakhriyar continues with bishop e2, and now we've got double attack on that knight, which obviously has to move. And it's incredibly not appealing to getting the knight on g7 because you're simply blocking your own bishop. So you don't want to get there, but instead you may choose to play knight to f4, which attacks the bishop, which is an active piece of white. So you do attack, plus you also attack g2. And now Mamedyarov plays d4, which is attacking the knight, also challenging the pawn on c5, and it looks very good here. And Magnus simply decides to take on e2, and knight takes. So that's the position after 7 moves at this very second in the game. Pawn takes on d4, and you may have all sorts of ideas. Probably most of us would be thinking about taking this black pawn. Most of us. But Mamedyarov decided, look, I am going to take this pawn anyway. So in the meantime, why not remembering that actually when we firstly started with the h-pawn, we do want to open up the h-file for the rook. And the reason being, black is going to think twice in case they want to castle kingside. It's incredibly challenging and dangerous to do so if the rook is on the open h file. So that's something for black to ponder over and be very careful about. So f4 being played now because you want to protect the pawn being attacked by the bishop, and pawn takes. And Mamedyarov takes back with the knight, and probably he planned, when he did this move, he probably planned to, if possible, given a chance, knight to f5, but that's exactly what Magnus stopped it from happening, because now the d6 pawn reveals the bishop diagonal, and now the knight cannot play on f5. And now Shak came with a very creative stuff, and actually he shuts off the bishop completely. He played e6 now, and even if it looks like you're giving away material, you're actually going to make a very bad pawn structure here for the white king. So you kind of can't afford the luxury to taking here, because let's say bishop takes, knight takes, and pawn takes, and now you've got double pawns on the e. This guy will be captured very soon, and you might be getting all sort of checks and attacking moves on the black king. So Carlsen plays queen to a5, which checks the white king. Okay, so it happens in very many Sicilians. You will get the queen being played on a5, and in our case here with check, which you may very well play knight to c3, developing a piece of the back rank, stopping the check coming from the black queen, and, you know, getting your stuff in the game. Probably all the strong chess players on the planet would always say that, if possible, just go as quickly as you can, getting all your pieces from the back rank. So you have to develop your stuff. So never ever forget this one, my chess friends, how important it is to activate your pieces very quickly. So now bishop took the pawn, and rook takes with tempo. The rook took on h5, attacking the black queen. The white queen defends the rook, so the black queen must move. And Carlsen chooses to place the queen on to b6. Now, queen to b6, probably you've already seen this, guys. The queen on b6, and the bishop teams up with the bishop. So we've got a double attack on the d4. And although it may look that if you were to play bishop e3, this guy is actually hanging, if you give it some extra thinking, you will actually realize that the b2 pawn is a very poisonous pawn. So this pawn can't be taken by the black queen, because if they were to take, you would be playing knight to a4, and then the black queen would be trapped, taken. So that would be pretty much the end of the game. So obviously Magnus didn't play that. So he played knight c6, developing. Nothing wrong, and actually you must. And now look at this rook. So you've opened up the h file, you move the rook up to the 5th rank, and now you move it over to the b file, attacking the queen. Now, I don't know how many of us played this stuff, and on move number 15, your rook, which is on h1, gets on the 5th rank on the b file. I mean, probably it's not happening very often. But because the queen was on b6, that's where the rook is. That's where you're attacking. If you can't attack the king, attack the queen. Rook goes on c7. Knight takes on e6. And before you take here, you may want to take on c3, because, you know, you're just giving isolated pawn on a and double pawns on the c file. So now Shakriat took on c3. Black pawn takes on e6, and probably you may say, okay, I think that's a very good spot for the king to be, which is exactly what Magnus played. After Mamedyarov moved the queen over to h5, which checks the king, and now it just moved the king over to d7. Looks like a safe spot here, right? Well, you're going to see what's going to happen shortly now. Oops, wait a second. So now Mamedyarov pushes the pawn from f4 to f5. They just simply want to open up as many lines as possible, making the queen active, checking, attacking, posing problems. And now knight to d8. Now, it may look like a defensive move at the first glance, and it is so, playing this function as well, to just try and sort of reinforce that pawn. But the actual reason being that the queen does target the c3, and that would be a fork. And that would be the end of the game for white. So you've got to do something. And Shakriat plays castle queenside now, placing the rook on the semi-open file where the black king is, and you no longer getting checked and forked. So that serves two things. King is safe, and now you are attacking the black king, which is more insecure and more exposed to attacks than the white king. Now rook goes over to f8. He just tried to make some counter game. He tried to water down the rook, teaming up with the queen. Some exchange, some tradings. But here comes the very interesting move, rook to c5. Now, looks a bit dubious here, because the almighty engine always sees perfectly in the future, if I may say that, anticipating accurately everything. But we are humans, and at our level, it might not be very obvious when we making an error or our opponent. Here, the engine will always tell you to play in this position. You don't need to believe me. You can put it yourselves on your own engines, my chess friends. Will tell you to do queen to b6 or queen to b8 or knight to c6. Now, queen to b6, traditionally, you just don't want to get the queen x-rayed by the bishop and having a discovered attack on the queen. It just looks so uncomfortable. And also getting the queen on b8, isolating your own rook, giving up on the c file, I mean, just looks incredibly painful. And now Magnus played a blunder. So if the game at this point is balanced, now Magnus played a blunder. Queen took on c5. And now, instead of just taking straight away, which probably Magnus thought that they're going to do, actually, he takes with tempo first. He takes with tempo first. E6, checkmate. So now you got a nice double attack on the queen as well, which is anyway absolutely compromised here. King moved on c6, and now you just simply took the queen off the board. It's going to be very difficult for black to survive. If Magnus thought that maybe a rook and the knight might be enough to oppose the queen, it's not going to be. It's not going to be. We got all sorts of threats looming on the horizon, and after Mamedyarov played the rook on d7, you already can envisage this kind of very deadly batteries. And after sequences like, I don't know, just give an example. King b5, a4, I mean, it's going to be incredibly problematic, and checkmate is looming on the horizon. So, very tough choices here for black. Actually, there is no good moves, because now black is going to lose the game. Rook took on e7, and yeah, well, reinforcing this guy and threatening on h7, which was already a liability. I mean, you can't keep that pawn alive, and although looks like you attacking, it's not gonna work. You opposing, and because you have material advantage, you want to trade off pieces. Another idea, my chess friends, you've got material advantage, go for the tradings, okay? Keep your advantage obvious, simplify the game, and this is it. You need not complicate it unnecessarily, okay? Now, the pawn had been taken on h7, and the battery here, attacking on b7, is very dangerous stuff, okay? Now, Magnus chose to take the pawn, and rook took on b7, and it's going to go down very quickly. A beautiful tactic played by Mamedyarov now, which is queen to d3, check. Now, probably you've seen if king takes the rook, you're going to play then queen to d7, checking and taking the rook back, and this is very painful for black. But there is no other choice, because if you do something like king to a5, queen is going to play on b5, checkmating. So he didn't really have a choice here. Queen to d7, check, and forking, king moves, and now you take the rook. And there is no good move for black. And this pawn on g2 actually will be promoted, and there's nothing that black can do to stop it. So they've tried to find some checks, but to no avail really, because there is no checkmate threat. There is no tactics that might complicate the game and make it impossible for white. It's coming. It's just going down now. Queen very nicely plays on f8. You've got so many possibilities with forks and stuff. I know that the knight on a5 played by black might be some checks on c4, but after you push the pawn and after the check, simply just get the king over to a2. There is no more checks. And actually, I don't know where the black rook wants to go, because after moves like, give an example, queen to e6, forking the king and the knight, even if they try to defend, after a4, luring the king away, the knight is going to be captured. And then that's it, game over. So at this point, Magnus simply resigned. The game, there's no point in continuing. He did make a blunder with queen took on c5. It happens. But I think this Mengarini variation, guys, in case you didn't add it to your repertoire, it's totally worth it. Have a look at this game again if you want. I'm going to copy the pigeon for you guys to put it yourselves on your own computers at home and study the game if you would like to do so. And overall, there was a Mengarini variation Sicilian defense in between Shakhriyar Mamedyarov and Magnus Carlsen,